I'll ask you to turn your attention to the book of Philemon. It is a wonderful book. It's a very short book, and you can miss it if you don't look carefully. It's couched between the book of Titus and the book of Hebrews in the New Testament. While you find it, let me give you a little background on this book. A little context for the writing of it. It is a letter to Philemon. Philemon is a wealthy man who lives in the city of Colossae, which is to say, he's a Colossian. So when you read the book of Colossians, that was a letter from Paul to the city, the church that was founded in Colossae. Philemon is a rich man, has slaves, he has servants, he has a big house. Paul happens upon Philemon on his trip to Colossae and stays at his house and preaches and teaches there for some time. Converts Philemon, converts his wife and his son, who are addressed in the first portion of this book, and converts some of the slaves and some of his friends. They, in fact, begin a church there back in that day. After some time of staying there, Philemon and Paul become fast friends. They've grown to love each other. However, Paul must go ahead and continue his missionary work elsewhere. And he goes off elsewhere and eventually comes under house arrest in Rome, which is where we find ourselves in this story. While Paul has gone, there is another person who comes on the stage in the story. It's a young man named Onesimus. Onesimus is a slave of Philemon's, but Onesimus has grown weary of servitude. I don't want to be a slave anymore, he says to himself, and he hatches a plan. I'm going to run away to Rome. And to finance this runaway, he steals money from his master. So, as a slave, he's stolen money. That means death. And a slave, he's run away. If they could kill you twice, they would do that just for doing that. He runs away to Rome to hide among the masses of the cultures and the people there. It's much like New York City today. If you wanted to get lost in the shuffle, go to New York. You won't stand out. And a lot of the runaway slaves back then did just that. So Onesimus runs off. Eventually, though, because he wasn't a smart thief, he didn't steal enough money, he runs out of money. He never leveraged the money enough, and he runs out of it, and he is destitute now in a city that he does not know, with people who do not know him. But he has met Paul in his master's house. And he knows Paul to be a Christian man, and he says, I'm going to go to Paul and see if I can gain some comfort there. And so he seeks out Paul in this city. Paul is under house arrest, and he's able to get visitors. He's not in a dungeon. He's under just house arrest, so people can come and visit him and do things for him. And Onesimus goes there. And Paul, true to his nature, being the definitive Christian, envelops him in love. It's okay that you ran away. It's okay that you stole the money. And he envelops him in his love, and he tries to engender some good nature in this fugitive soul. He tries to shed the light of the gospel on it. And over time, Onesimus breaks down and accepts the faith and becomes a Christian. Now, in return for Paul's good deed, Onesimus endears himself to Paul, cares for him in his old age as he is retained in the shackles. He writes for him. He takes letters for him to different churches, as others there are doing also. He becomes a part of the mission field. Who would have thought? But this is what happens. It gets to the point, though, where Onesimus is in the spiritual sweet spot. And Paul looks at him and says, it's time. You have to go back home to your master. No doubt, this has to be a negative feeling for Onesimus. But Paul says it's the right thing to do. You belong to him. Now, part of what makes Onesimus nervous about this is because he's stolen money. That is death. He's run away. That is death. Essentially, Paul is saying, you've accepted Jesus Christ, you've accepted the faith, and you're a Christian. Now, march to death. But the story doesn't end there. Paul says, I won't send you by yourself. I'm going to write a letter of recommendation for you. And the beautiful love letter is what we have as the book of Philemon. It's a personal note from Paul to Philemon about this slave that Paul has come to love. We won't read all 25 verses, but follow me as we read verse 10 through 19. And then we'll take a look at some key factors in these verses. It says, I beseech thee, Onesimus, I beseech thee for my son, Onesimus, whom I have begotten in my bonds, which in time past was to thee unprofitable, but now profitable to thee and to me, whom I have sent again. Thou therefore receive him that is mine own bowels, whom I would have retained with me, that in thy stead he might have ministered unto me in the bonds of the gospel. But without thy mind would I do nothing, that thy benefit should be not as it were of necessity, but willingly. For perhaps he therefore departed for a season, that thou shouldest receive him forever. Not now as a servant, but above a servant, a brother, beloved especially to me, but how much more unto thee, both in the flesh and in the Lord. If thou count me therefore a partner, receive him as myself. If he hath wronged thee, or owed thee aught, put that on mine account. I, Paul, have written it with mine own hand. I will repay it. And we can stop there. Beautiful, beautiful verses. If I want someone to send a recommendation for me, and I know I'm in trouble, this ought to make me feel good. There is no recording here as to whether Onesimus understands what's in the letter. He just knows he has a recommendation from Paul. I look at our lives. If we know we have a recommendation from Jesus Christ, does it matter what it says? If we trust in him. Let's take a look at a couple of the verses and see if we can find something here that makes us feel good. Amen? Amen. All right. The first thing says, I beseech thee, in verse 10, I beseech thee for my son Onesimus, whom I have begotten